Welcome to Learning Aloud, a podcast from the Organizational Dynamics community at the University of Pennsylvania, produced to inspire purposeful leadership practice and transform organizational experience. I am your host, Stephen G. Hart. My guest today is Chris Mogee. Chris is currently a principal at Navigate Consulting, where she specializes in organizational design, corporate culture, and change management. Prior to joining Navigate, Chris spent almost 20 years working in product and marketing leadership roles in technology, telecommunications, and in media. In between her career moves, Chris spent a year as a full-time student to finish her Master's of Science degree in Organizational Dynamics at the University of Pennsylvania. Her courses and research interests concentrated on organizational design, people and culture, change management, digital transformation, and corporate social responsibility. Chris's Capstone focused on corporate social responsibility, specifically as a way to increase employee engagement. She stopped by our studio today to talk about her work, her time on the program, and her Capstone project. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really happy to get to spend some time with my favorite professor.
Well, it's great to have you. So tell me a little about Navigate Consulting. What do they do, and what's your role there?
Sure. So I'm actually just a few months into my role at Navigate, and Navigate is a management consulting firm. We're headquartered here in Philadelphia, and we like to think that we take hard-to-solve problems for some of the region's largest corporations and complex organizations, and we deliver measurable, lasting impact. We focus on what ultimately drives business performance, and that's the way people work together. That's really key. After I graduated from Penn, I spent some time at a larger national consulting firm, and it was great, but I was really drawn to Navigate's ethos and the kind of energy that you get working at a smaller firm. After working for large organizations my whole career, it was really nice to go work for a smaller place. It was just kind of an exciting and welcome change. I really didn't realize what I was missing all those years, actually. Our whole leadership team at Navigate, we really draw on our respective and really varied past experiences to solve our clients' tough problems. And I think we complement each other, and therefore we deliver great outcomes. I think our clients recognize that business transformation is a journey, and we join them on that journey. We have a lot of choices, or there are a lot of choices when it comes to consulting firms. And I think our clients choose us because we jump in and work shoulder to shoulder with them. And just the way we work, I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Well, that's great. And since you've been there, you've become certified in ProSai?
Yes, ProSai.
ProSai Change Management.
Yes.
So what is that, and what did you have to do to become certified?
So ProSai is a certification program, and it teaches their practitioners how to apply change management methodologies, which are known as ADKAR, and applying those in your everyday work. For me, after completing the master's program at Penn and really spending years driving transformational change in various roles I held, it was a good way to formalize and really hone some of those skills that I had sort of developed out of necessity in order to help organizations change and grow. I always felt like I knew how to build a house, but I was using bubblegum and duct tape, and it's somehow held together. And so ProSai sort of gave me the tools in the toolbox to really be able to be a better builder.
Great. So you made quite a leap in your career after about 20 years, going from product and marketing leadership and technology, communications and media into organizational design, culture, and change management. Why did you make that leap, and what inspired you to make the change?
Honestly, part of it was I was just a little burnt out. I realized after 20 plus years that life didn't turn out at all as I had expected. But not only that, I didn't really have a passion for what I was doing. I worked for great companies. I loved the people I worked with, and I'm super grateful and forever will be for the opportunities I had, both at Verizon and at Comcast. But I didn't leap out of bed every morning anxious to go to work. I think like many people, I just took a job after college. I blinked, 20 years had gone by. I had a title, I had an office, all those things, but I was a little bored. And maybe it's about reaching a certain age or a certain point in your life, but I realized that I needed something that I cared about. And I had this need to want to make a difference somehow, and I wasn't getting that in the large companies I worked for. So I thought maybe the best way to do that was to leverage all this experience that I had and be able to help others as they were taking similar journeys to what I had experienced. It was actually a friend at Penn, and when I started the program, it was the first course I took in the University of Pennsylvania Org Dynamics program, who actually said, given where you are, you might want to consider consulting. And as I thought about it, it seemed like a good way to help others Generally, consulting isn't something you go into to be helpful. It's not philanthropic, but for me, it was a way to really leverage the experience and help other organizations. And after 20 years in one industry, a lot of the fun for me is learning new businesses. So I worked in one industry. For me now, I get to learn pharmaceuticals. I'm learning home building. So all these different industries that I haven't had experience in before. That's really what I love about Navigate. There's this genuine passion that I have that I feel like the firm has to really help clients.
Yeah, it sounds like you were really, though, looking for a deeper sense of purpose and meaning.
Yes,
Is that
very
correct?
much, very much. And I kind of got more interested in that concept once I started my studies at Penn.
Right. Well, you are a graduate of the Organizational Dynamics program here, and I wonder what has stuck with you from your time on the program that you're now using in your role at Navigate Consulting.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I started at Navigate, they have a really interesting approach to their onboarding. They put all team members, any new team members, through a strengths assessment. And not surprisingly, I suppose, one of my strengths is that I'm a learner. I have this natural curiosity. I want to learn as much as I can about a subject in a really short period of time and then move on to the next one. So it actually lends itself pretty nicely to consulting. The organizational dynamics at Penn really helped me develop my approach to that learning and studying and research. So it all really kind of came together nicely when I got to Navigate. And the other unique thing about the program at Penn is it gave me a lot of opportunity to sort of do some self-reflection, think about what I wanted. And it helped me then to land at Navigate. I learned that I wanted to work for a small company. I learned that I had something to give back when it came to all the experience I had. And so landing at Navigate was just a really good fit and a nice complement to everything I had learned in my time at the program at Penn.
Yeah, it sounds like your time here was somewhat self-reflective, so it gave you a chance to figure out what you really wanted to do when you grow up, right?
It really was. In fact, Dr. Janet Greco, she always says that the program either draws people who are at a point in change in their life, or once they get into the program, it does force that self-reflection. I think for me, it was a little bit of both. I knew I was ready for a change, but it made me really look and think about what I wanted to do next.
Great. Well, one of the things you did was a capstone
Yes.
for your degree, which I had the pleasure of working with you on. And you chose to write about corporate social responsibility, or CSR as it's often called, its effect on driving employee engagement in particular. I think your topic is extraordinarily timely given the increase in interest that it has today. How would you define corporate social responsibility, and what inspired you to choose this topic? And what did you want to prove in your paper?
So a few things. One of the challenges initially was, and what's interesting about corporate social responsibility is that it can take so many forms. Like if you go back in history, the late 1800s, the early 1900s, CSR sort of manifested itself in the form of philanthropy. So if you think of Carnegie or Rockefeller, these wealthy business owners felt this need to give back. And fast forward a little bit to the 1970s, and it was the idea that business should make a positive impact on society, sort of began to take hold a little bit. But the definition of CSR since then is really starting to expand, and that's where it gets exciting for me. Outside of that traditional philanthropy, CSR can involve things like environmental impact, sustainable practices, which are, of course, very hot topics today. It can be as simple as recycling in the office or not using plasticware in the cafeteria, reducing your carbon footprint, or even things like assuring your whole supply chain or your vendors and partners are all environmentally sound and using sound policies and practices. Another way that companies practice CSR, and I think it's one of the most impactful, is making that clear connection between the social impact and the corporate mission. To me, that's the ideal. So if you think of companies that exist with a core objective of making society a better place, like Tom's of Maine, Method, the cleaning products, or Patagonia, those are companies that are sort of best in class when it comes to that combining social impact and their core corporate mission. Now, the reality is companies aren't founded to make society better, right? Companies have to sell products, they have to turn profits, that doesn't change. But as a corporate entity, if you can find a way to make the world a better place, it's a good thing. And a side benefit, and that's where I really got interested and your course helped, is you have the ability to attract and recruit talent because people want to work for companies that they feel good about and that are doing good. But like what I found at Comcast or at Verizon is that a lot of large organizations still take that traditional corporate foundation approach. And there's nothing wrong with that. Large companies writing checks to local charities, contributing to the arts, or employee volunteer days, all that stuff's good work and very important, yes. They're worthy efforts, but I think they can feel a little bit disconnected from the business. It certainly did for me. And so those efforts, while worthwhile, don't always have the impact they could internally on the employees, I think. And so when I was working for these kinds of companies, I became interested in this because we did have employee volunteer days. And I felt great about cleaning up the local rec center in my community or walking dogs at the animal shelter. It made me feel connected to my community, but not as much to the company or the place I worked. At the time, I was in marketing when I started to think about this topic, and I approached our corporate foundation about how do we message and advertise some of this good work we're doing. And now this was several years ago, but the general feeling was we don't go bragging about the good work we do. And in some respects, that makes sense. I mean, if the company opens a theater or puts their name on a theater and makes a donation to the local arts, you don't necessarily want to put a billboard up that says, we spent $5 million building the local theater here in the community. So I get the approach to not want to sort of brag about it, but at the same time, it's becoming more and more important, not only to consumers, but to employees as well. So this disconnect was still there for me. Companies are doing good. The employees want to feel good about where they work, but that bridge was not there. So I just wanted to explore it further. And fast forward to the program at Penn. I left after 10 years at Comcast, and I'm a full-time student, and I still had an interest in this area. So I took actually an elective course in corporate social responsibility where I had the opportunity to study in the Netherlands, which I'd never been. So Rotterdam and Amsterdam was very cool. And we studied European CSR practices. And what was interesting for me just to learn is that generally speaking, and I'm kind of being a little bit general or broad here, but CSR is a bit different in Europe. It's a little bit more explicit in the US. In Europe or other more regulated economies, its social initiatives are sort of part of the normal course of business. These companies are regulated. They sort of have to do some of these socially good practices. In the U.S., it's somewhat of a choice by the companies, and granted, it's becoming more important, but it's just more inherent and more implicit in Europe. And so that idea of it just becomes part of the norm, while it's very different there, it became just sort of interesting to me. How can we maybe look to apply that here in the U.S.? Yeah. And so, I think that was the beginning or the trigger for me to come up with that capstone topic.
Well, I'm especially interested in how you specifically linked a good CSR strategy with achieving higher levels of employee engagement. So how does that linkage play out for you?
So actually, it was your class that so the CSR course I took in the Netherlands, got me interested in the topic, but then your class kind of solidified it for me, and that was, of course, human capital management course. And this concept of talent management and talent acquisition was one of the group projects I did for your class, as you remember. And we presented a project called the War for Talent. And as I was doing that research, I started to see all this evidence that employees are seeking meaning and purpose in their work, and they want to know that where they work and their employer's values align with their own personal values. In fact, Deloitte just published a 2019 human capital study, and this is the year of the social organization. Yes. So this is becoming a more and more important topic to employees and to customers too, but I'm mostly focused on the employee side.
Right. Yeah, so you write in your capstone that CSR is most effective, impactful, and perceived as authentic when it's aligned with a corporation's core mission. I also know that a good CSR program can be profitable for an organization as well as enhance its reputation with the community, its employees, and its customers. But however, you also found that organizations often struggle to implement it. Why do you think they struggle? And what's your advice for how they should get started?
So I think for me it felt very familiar and that it was very similar. There were a lot of parallels to the challenges I felt when I was in marketing and proving the ROI or proving the value of the investment you make. And it's hard to do that when it comes to marketing and proving your advertising dollars work. It's also very hard to do when you're investing in your employees in corporate social responsibility programs. Proving that payback is what the finance folks always want to see, but it is a hard thing to prove or to quantify. Another reality is that, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies look at CSR, I think, as checking the box, right? Making those donations to charitable organizations makes the leadership feel good, and it kind of stops there, and they feel like they're doing enough. So one of the most interesting things I found in my research was this study of MBA programs around the globe. The study included about 25 MBA programs, 10 were in the US. And not surprisingly, MBA programs cover courses like economics or finance, and even things like marketing or HR. But looking at all these MBA programs, most of them don't offer CSR type courses. And so we're training the next generation of leaders, we're training the next generation of CEOs in the top tier MBA programs, and yet we're not arming them with ideas and courses on how to apply socially good practices in their businesses. So I think that's a huge gap, and we need to think about that as we look at the next generation of leadership.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I loved about your capstone was how you interviewed some companies and especially some terrific leaders who have already developed excellent approaches to CSR for your Capstone. So what stands out for you from those leaders you spoke with, and what did you personally learn from these leaders that sticks with you in your work today?
I feel really lucky because I got to interview some really interesting and dynamic leaders around the around the city rather. Comcast, Verizon, SAP. But I think the one that was most inspiring for me was Saint-Gobain. And so Carmen Ferrigno is the vice president of CSR strategy at Saint-Gobain. And even before we sat down to sort of talk and let me do my interview and ask him some questions about the program, he was so excited to show me the building. And Saint-Gobain is a brand or a company that most people don't know. They make building materials, and their purpose really is to improve the places where people live and work. But they're not a consumer-facing brand. Again, they sell to builders and sort of the industry. But Carmen was just so excited to show me some of the examples in their own building of the kind of products they produce. So I think his knowledge, his passion, his enthusiasm was contagious. I mean, I just felt it. And he had some really great ideas about engaging employees, partnering with other corporations too, which was a really interesting idea, and making Saint-Gobain's socially responsible practices like a core part of the business. That part was really inspiring. It wasn't a separate foundation. It's part of what they do every day. He also, interestingly, owns both CSR and public relations at Saint-Gobain. So he has this interesting lens where he will look at how do we tell the story of what we're doing. So he's sort of leading the good work, but then he also gets to be the storyteller. And I think that's effective both with their customers and certainly with their employees. And their employees have this really high level of engagement. So I think the payoff is definitely there.
Yeah, so you really saw sort of work in action.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's making a positive impact on society, or his company is, and his customers want to buy from him. His employees want to work for him or for the company. And I mean, that's what every customer or every company wants, right? Yeah. To have the best customers and the best employees.
Shows like the best effect all around.
Yep,
there, right?
Exactly.
Investment in that.
Exactly.
Now, I know that you are a person who's constantly driven to learn and grow. So what's next for you as you take on your new role at Navigate Consulting?
Yeah, so Navigate's been great so far. It's been a fun journey. And like I mentioned, there was that super cool strengths assessment that I had to do in the beginning. So now they too know that I'm a learner. But the assessment also showed a couple of other things that I want to kind of keep focused on. I'm an arranger generally. It described me in the study as a conductor. And I think strategically. So I'll absorb things and then sort of step back and synthesize it. So one of our core focus areas at Navigate is on the employee experience. And so as I look across our existing clients, I hope that I can begin to see some patterns on opportunities or where there are opportunities for us to help our clients improve the employee experience. So certainly we'll help them with whatever current business challenges they have today, but then proactively looking for ways to identify ways where they can implement business strategies that have that positive impact on society and then also help their employees as well.
Yeah. So are you seeing then your work on the CSR interest and your new role in the consulting is sort of coming together now?
I am, yeah. It's starting to come together, and the idea of being in a position where I can help multiple companies, get a lens into how different companies work, and be able to help them understand the importance of employee engagement and help their employees feel good about showing up for work every day. I feel like it's an opportunity to make an impact.
Yeah, and do you see anything in the new generation of workers that's of
I do.
interest there? What do you notice?
They care more than just salary and money. And that's not to say like my generation or any older generations are necessarily greedy, but I think the younger generations care more about social impact, social good. Do I feel good about where I work? And it's not, and I think sometimes those generations get the, what's the word? The idea that they have to have ping pong tables and beer in the refrigerator. And it's more than just that. They really want to feel good about where they work. They want to feel pride in what they do. And so if they can find a place to work that aligns with their own core values, that's as important to them as salary or benefits, I think.
Yeah, so that's well worth the time for the company to invest, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
That kind of thinking.
Yes.
That's great. Well, I wish you all the very best in your new role. I've been speaking with Chris Mogee, a recent graduate of the Organizational Dynamics program at the University of Pennsylvania, and now a principal at Navigate Consulting, where she specializes in organizational design, culture, and change management. Thanks very much for stopping by our studio today, Chris. It was great to have you.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.